Greetings, Putz, and welcome to Fly's Flight Academy. My name is Kovakas, otherwise known as Flyteco on Sator, and today we're going to be continuing on with our ship breakdowns, particularly of the Scout variety. Today we're going to be talking about the Flashfire and its nice, amazing offensive package. This is the quintessential. This is the Scout. If you guys looked at any of the promotional art, I'm pretty sure the Flashfire was on there. It's the ship that you run in the tutorial. It's a bunch of things to GSF. It's got a lot of nice history, and it looks like an A-wing, and that's pretty cool. And that's the end of the Flashfire breakdown. I'm just kidding. What the ship is known as, it is commonly your skirmisher ship, and of note, it is extremely strong against gunships. This ship is meant to be extremely aggressive. With that in mind, I actually don't recommend you learning the Flashfire first. I would argue to say you should learn the Nova Dive before you learn the Flashfire, because the Flashfire really, really asks you to just always be fighting. And the Nova Dive will teach you the evasiveness you need for the Flashfire to be good. This is the only ship in the game that I personally think that you need to tailor to the ship, not the ship tailors to you. And that's saying a lot because GSF is honestly a fairly simple thing to learn. And for a ship to essentially ask you to have a playstyle completely associated with it is pretty crazy. Main advantages of this ship, it has very strong offensive buffs. I'm pretty sure all of them are straight up damage increases to some degree for its systems. And I honestly would argue that this ship has one of the highest, if not the highest, honestly, skill ceilings in the game, because advanced Flashfire pilots can easily dominate a map. Of course, the asterisk there is it requires a ton of practice to be that advanced Flashfire. And even, honestly, even a average to decent Flashfire really can get a lot of mileage out of the ship. It's mostly just that early stage, if you're learning the Flashfire, that you kind of have to get past. But that kind of goes without saying. That applies to all ships realistically. Just the Flashfire asks a bit more. So moving swiftly on, you're going to notice very quickly that the Flashfire really doesn't have much outside of damage. Starting with its primaries, it has 4 amazing options. And, well, I say 4. It's 3 and 1 okay option. You have the duo of rapid fire light laser, which are essentially the same weapon, just with different damage profiles, and rapid fire has armor pen, but light laser doesn't, but light laser has higher damage than rapid fire, and they kind of trade blows like that. So as such, I'm about to group these together as a thing. With both of them, you're going to be taking improved firing arc and increased hull damage. Realistically, these fill the same role if you're looking for a sustained fire weapon. Right now, I'd actually say light laser is better than rapid fire just because armor is not prevalent, but rapid fire is also totally acceptable if you want that sustained fire. But where this ship becomes its deadliest is the burst laser cannon. This is, as it says, it's a quick burst. I believe it's a burst of like 5 bullets, but this is where that super aggressive playstyle comes into play. The main build for this ship is burst laser rocket pod, which is as CQC as it gets. Because with burst laser, the further away you are, the more likely you are to miss bolts in your burst, and that actually does drop your damage significantly. So what you really want to do, and if you look at its stats, it is very reflected in that. You want to be in that. I mean, it's 3K meters is acceptable. I genuinely believe 2K and closer is where you want to be sitting with this ship. Even 1.5 is like the sweet spot, because the accuracy of burst laser goes up insanely high. Its variance is 123 to 78 between its min and max range. that is a huge jump. So essentially, the further away you are, and this is a very short range jump too. It's 750 meters to then 3,000, which is a huge leap for a 30% increase, which makes sense. And then from 3,000 to 4,000, it loses another like 15%. So you really need to be in the sweet spot of about 2,000, and that'll get you pretty dang close to that 100% accuracy. Of note, it has decent power draw problems, but it does so much damage that it doesn't really matter. Its rate of fire is extremely low, but that is misconceiving because it is the rate of fire of the full burst, which is essentially equivalent to you firing a few shots off in that burst. So it's kind of okay. Of note, if you ever have wanted to run a crit build, here's your time to do it. It already has an innate 5%, so innate at level 2. It just gives you the 5% here. And the benefits of burst laser are here. I'll even go through the full tree for you. So that's tier 1. It's just a flat damage or 5% damage increase. Nothing too crazy. At tier 2, you get an accuracy bump of 2%, which is laughably bad. But it gives you that 5% crit, which honestly is also pretty bad, but actually synergizes with some stuff later, so it's kind of okay. You'll notice the burst laser stats seem very sad, honestly, but the synergy it has with the systems on the ship is where it comes into play. At tier 3, it also has that super cool ignore armor that comes into play really early on. That's super nice. Not too crazy in this meta, but it helps you keep your damage consistent, which with burst laser is actually fairly important. I'd argue it's way more important than on rapid fire. At tier 4, you have some interesting options. I wish the shield piercing was down here and the shield damage is up here, because here you have increased firing arc and tracking, which is what you want to take. Here, CQC ship, you really need that firing arc and as little accuracy problems as possible, especially with how hard the ship scales on its accuracy. You really need it to be accurate. Shield piercing, it's an 8%er, which kind of blows, but it would be amazing anyways. Unfortunately, it's in the same slot as that firing arc, so can't take it this time around. And at tier 5, you're going to take increased hull damage, which is a 16%er. That's a lot of hull damage. Brings you to 1,200, which doesn't sound that much, but it's a lot. And it's a lot because it's 1,200 essentially shotgunning the enemy every like second. Of last mention, quad lasers is here. This is the one ship that can run crit build. I have actually run it myself, and it's actually pretty fun. You obviously run the crit pair instead of this pair. I sincerely don't recommend running quad laser on this ship. I have seen Flashfires use quad laser to great success, but I really think that everything quad laser gives you, burst laser gives you and more. So realistically speaking, I'd argue burst laser is just significantly better. So moving swiftly on, in your secondary, you have 2 really good options and one that is kind of a meme, especially on this ship. Sabotage Probe, never run it on this ship. It's okay on Nova Dive, but there's 0 enabler for you to use on this ship, which kind of sucks. So, that's kind of a write-off. But you have the 2 best CQC options in the game. You have rocket pods and cluster missile. I believe, I'm going to start with rocket pods. Rocket pods is the stronger of the 2 options. This is due to the fact that there is no lock-on for this thing, so you're more likely to get the drop on your enemy, because the sound of a lock-on alerts your enemies. But without having one, you can actually, if you're like fighting a gunship, which you really should be on this ship, you're going to sneak into that gunship because they're going to be in their railgun, they're going to be zoomed in, and they're going to be firing on your teammates. And if you sneak in from the side, you get in really close to that 2k meter range, and you blast them with rocket pods, and you blast them with burst laser, and they die. It's the easiest playstyle in the game. The learning curve with these is they are free firing, so you sincerely, especially on this ship, need to train your aim. Aiming on this ship is actually its highest learning curve, and the burst laser and rocket pod honestly have more or less the same accuracy scaling. So if you train yourself with one, you're training yourself with the other. So as long as you're kind of keeping an active thought of I need to learn or I need to practice my aim, you'll get really good with burst laser, and as a result, you get good at rocket pods, and then that translates into the Nova Dive and etc. etc. And it's all just a really good time. For the upgrades, this is kind of an interesting situation because the way I personally run this ship, I run it exclusively for that CQC. And as such, I don't really want my rocket pods, or I don't really need to dump a ton of like extra utility in my rocket pods. So as such, and once again, rocket pods have just this amazing tier of like ignore armor tier 1, some rate of fire, shield piercing, just great. At tier 4, normally on any other ship, especially any other scout realistically. So on the Nova Dive, in other words, you run increased firing arc because your ships have just enough range to where you're not realistically going to be shotgunning people with rocket pods like you will be on the Flashfire. So on the Nova Dive in particular, I take firing arc. On this ship, because we're realistically going to be trying to surprise gunships and like, I'm actually opting for increased ammo capacity because this is a flat 8 ammo, bringing you from 32 to 40 without any crew, which is really, really important because not having to put in a crew or not having to put in an ammo crewmate is really nice. So you get 40 shots of extra burst damage essentially. And at tier 5, you're going to take Plasma Warhead. This is kind of the same argument. I didn't run increased range on my Nova Dive either, just because it's not really needed. But Plasma Warhead is especially good on the Flashfire because you are not chasing other people, you're exclusively chasing a gunship, and anytime you have that damage ticking, it's A, helping you track a little bit better, and B, it's stopping their shields from going up, and overall, it's just keeping more pressure on them by making them think they're going to die from the burn. Realistically speaking, I think I've only ever gotten one kill ever in the like however many hours I have on the Flashfire with the burn, and it was hilarious when it happened, but it's not going to happen. So don't rely on it, but it's there. It's an extra 15% if you let it run its full tick, which is an extra like 20 damage. Oh no, it's an extra 40. That's not terrible. It's okay. Moving on to the cluster missiles, these are the same thing, but honestly are worse. A, because they have a lock on, and B, they do have a little bit of cooldown. But what they do is they still have that same spammable burst, and these are honestly burstier to a degree. So if you want to get that like 2-tap with the burst laser and then clean up with cluster missiles, that's kind of the combo you're looking for. I personally believe that these are better for pilots that prefer the straight fight, and complete honesty, these are for people that don't like rocket pods. That's really the main role they fill here. If you really just can't click with rocket pods and you're just not used to them, and you can't make them work for you, that's okay. Cluster missiles are still really good. They fill exactly the same role. Of note, they don't have that armor pen, which kind of blows, but that's okay. You're still not really fighting armor targets. You actually can with the rocket pods, so I do recommend you take rocket pods anyways, because they have ignore armor, which is really good. But cluster missile still gives you enough burst that it kind of doesn't matter. The nice thing as well is these have little to no learning curve for the pilots that are learning the Flashfire. However, I sincerely recommend that if you're going to be using rocket pods, you really should be learning with the build that you're going to use with the end goal of your build. So if you're gonna end up running the burst laser rocket pod, essentially if you're gonna be running the traditional Flashfire, you really need to learn that rocket pods. If not running cluster missile, I honestly, you can still run burst laser and you'll be totally fine. So honestly, there's no change for you. Just know that you're gonna have a little bit of a harder time against gunships, and that's really it. You're not sacrificing too much to take these. For tier 4 and tier 5, you're going to be taking increased ammo capacity. This is to counteract tier 5, which is double volley, which essentially fires a second volley without taking a second ammo. But the second volley is going to do 30% damage, but it cuts your ammo capacity in half, so you really need that 4 extra ammo, which is really 2 extra ammo, to get you to a solid 12 ammo. Now that I'm looking at it, I'm surprised I didn't put this in my notes. That is the one huge difference. This is 12 shots and this is 40. They're different damage values, so clearly that's okay. Realistically speaking, at rocket pods with 40 ammo to the 10 base you would have with cluster missiles without taking improved ammo capacities, honestly about the same damage output. So I think it's okay. Realistically, you're not losing too much value. It's just a different type of burst. Moving on, I'm going to be talking exclusively about targeting telemetry, and I'm doing this to save time mostly, but I have an extremely high bias towards blaster overcharge. It's hilarious. I highly recommend, and this is 100% of my build guide. I'm even gonna I don't know, I'm gonna make it look special. I personally call it the chainsaw because it's light laser with its fairly high RPM, or even rapid fire because it's 240. And then you run blast overcharge, which increases it by 25% at base, and then you run a bunch of other stuff, and it's really funny. But I'm only going to be talking about targeting telemetry because that is classic Flashfire. So, targeting telemetry, what it does. It increases your accuracy, your crit, and your sensor range, which honestly on this ship is not important. But that accuracy and crit are really important. And there's a little blurb here that says it removes cloaking effects from all enemies. That doesn't do anything in the game because they didn't include stealth ships, which they were going to, but they stopped. So I'm not gonna rant about that. But if you ever want to hear about it, I'll be happy to rant to you in person. But that is effectively a deadline. So the sensor range and that cloaking effect are essentially useless, and this is only for the accuracy and the crit, which is fine, because you know what burst lasers love? Accuracy and crit. So, going through its tiers, at tier 1, you're going to get reduced cooldown for 15 seconds. This brings it down to 30 seconds, which actually means it's available a lot. You're fairly consistently going to have this for fights, which is nice, especially if you're taking that role of gunship hunter. You're going to have this for almost every gunship fight, unless you're fighting a gunship block, in which case you're going to have it through one fight and then probably be in danger afterwards. At tier 2, this is a dead perk, and I really wish it wasn't here. At tier 3, you're going to get increased duration, which brings it up to 15 seconds, which is actually really, really good, because it means for 15 seconds, you can fight just about anything, and pretty much do a ton of damage. Moving to tier 4, this is kind of a weird thing to quantify the benefits of either of these, because 8% evasion is honestly nothing, but you are still running evasion in your armor and from distortion field, but evasion stacking is not really a thing that people do. There's really no good reason to do it, at least not actively. So realistically, you take target prediction here because reducing enemy evasion technically means you can hit them easier. So it's okay. It is exclusively within that 3,000 meter or 5,000 at tier 2 meter radius. So it's pretty short range, but you're short range anyway, so it's okay. At tier 5, this is where things get really spicy. You have extended range, which sucks. Please don't take this. And then you have precision targeting, which is the crit build. It's what everyone wanted in GSF, for things to crit and do a ton of damage. Am I right? No? Okay. So for 15 seconds, you do an extra 25% crit damage on top of the 25%, or sorry, 50%. So you're getting 75% crit damage on the burst laser, which essentially means I believe you're doing upwards of 2,000 damage. I think it's either 2,000 or like 2,200. It's up there. It's really high. You can actually two-tap people with this. If you crit someone twice, they are always dead. That's great. I'm glad there's a ship that can do that. Aren't you glad? No? Okay. But this really is the reason Flashfire is good. It's not as consistent. It's not consistent, trust me. You're not going to always be critting people. But when you do, that person is going to have a terrible time. They're either going to instantly die because you were already shooting them to begin with, or they're going to be pretty dang close, and you can probably clean them up with that hilarious rocket pod burn damage that I was talking about earlier. There's really no downside to this because the other option just sucks. So have fun, run your crit build. Just don't. I'm doing it anyways. Run the run the crit crewmate. I don't actually recommend you do that. I actually run Ireso most of the time, just because the extra accuracy is really good. But if you really want that crit, this is a 36% increase, plus it's like 16% on your rocket pod, so it's hilarious. Try it. I actually really recommend the crit build. It's absolutely hilarious when you crit someone for like 2,500 damage and they have there's no counterplay. I mean, you can't undamage yourself. It has armor pens, so you're already just laughing in their face all the way to the bank. It's great. On shields, standard scout package, you're running distortion field. This is to get that extra missile. This is to get the extra missile lock break, not missile. I seriously don't know how to like distinguish these two. It breaks their preemptive lock. It does not break missiles that have already fired at you. But on the Flashfire in particular, you're using this really aggressively, and essentially the second someone starts to lock onto you, if you are close enough to start fighting them, you distortion and you start shooting, because you're probably going to kill them before they get a second lock anyways, so it's okay. You don't have to play tricksy games with holding it until you think they're about to fire. You can really just use it super aggressively and get away with it because your damage is high enough. Moving swiftly on from that, your engines. Now, you have the option. There is no other option. I mean this. There is no choice but retro thrusters. This is the perfect engine for this ship, and I seriously cannot I can't just this. It's so beautifully tailored for the ship. It gives you so much aggressive creativity, and the options are limitless. I mean, using it for that quick like burst of just extra spacing when you're right on top of someone. So the way you would use this on Starguard is you would retro thruster when you're getting close to them. What you do in Flashfire is you retro thruster when you are in them. And what this means is when your ships are essentially about to collide, you're retro thrusting and burst lasering immediately. And what that should do is that should give you that extra last shot to really make your enemy just think they messed up and like you hacked or something. But it really just does let you have like insane outplay potential. None of these other options give you that same flexibility. I mean, the closest one is technically Power Dive, but not really. You really, really, really should run retro thrusters. There is a single thing I need to warn you about. and it comes more into play here than it does on the Starguard. The engine has a very high skill curve. You essentially need to be tracking where you were and not where you're going, because at the higher speeds that scouts have, you're going to be moving quickly through terrain. And if you don't remember, hey, there's a rock behind me, you're going to retro thruster, tap the rock, and die. So you really, really need to be paying attention to where you've been and not necessarily where you're going, because you don't want to die by retro thrusting. It's embarrassing, and I do it a lot because I don't have that good of a memory. But if you can get away with it, you're gonna see so much mileage out of this. And I I sincerely believe that the ship is honestly the best in the game. Um, it really just kind of lets you do what you want if you play it well. A good Starguard can really give you a run for your money in terms of aggression, but the Flashfire is just the potential for it to just burst people in like 2 seconds flat is really high, and the potential for it to crit and kill someone in 1 second is also really high. So this ship's burst damage is just through the charts, and it has all the tools it needs to just really hammer in that playstyle. Like I said, though, this ship does really require you to tailor to it. If you try and make this ship work for you, you're gonna notice that it's a little bit weaker. That joke build that I was talking about, the blast overcharge, is absolutely hilarious and still extremely deadly just because of the weapon choices of the ship. But in comparison to the targeting telemetry, I'm not killing people nearly as quickly as I could. It looks really funny, don't get me wrong, and it sounds really stupid because it really just the sound starts glitching out when you get up to the highest, like the really high RPMs that this can achieve. Because I think this gives you like 33%. Yeah, it gives you 33% extra fire rate, especially on top of the rapid fire. You're going crazy. But it doesn't do damage, so that's kind of the issue. That's really it for Flashfire. Oh, right, taking increased turning rate and retro thrusters. And yeah, of all the scouts, I honestly recommend Sphere Point. Nova Dive is your quintessential disruptor, and Flashfire is that skirmisher. They all fill different roles. Surprisingly, the three scouts are extremely versatile, really. If you're a scout main, you're gonna get a lot of value out of your scouts because the things that counter you are the things that you counter. So it's kind of a skill matchup in every scenario. And if you're learning and you slowly become better than most players, you're going to be able to win those fights pretty handedly, even against the more advanced players. A good Flashfire makes gunships look hilariously weak. They make bombers look like candy, honestly. I mean, they really make anything look like a joke, and that's kind of hard to beat. I mean, ultimate power is really nice. So run Flashfire, it's a nice ship. That is actually it for all of our scouts. Up next, we're going to be doing gunships. Once again, this is because I believe gunships require a lot of time, so fair warning, the gunship videos are probably going to be a bit longer. I apologize. There's just a lot of talk about. Unfortunately, gunships are a bit more skill focused than I would have liked them to be in current meta. Honestly, gunships right now, as of time for recording, which is essentially early 2021, there is a fairly aggressive meta happening, and gunships don't necessarily fit into that meta very well. You'll still see gunships pop out in TDM, but that's because that's where gunships live. But outside of, I mean, even in TDM, they're starting to become rare, so it's kind of interesting. But when we get there, we'll get there. So for now, I hope you guys all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you out in the skies.